Oh my word, I'm sat here all talking. So here we are, guys. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to my stream where we're going to be doing leg two of the Amelia Earhart round the world trip, where we're going to be traveling from Burbank today in Southern California, eastish to Tucson, Arizona. Hey Jefferson, and good afternoon and welcome. And I was saying last time that, hey Bell Bro, lovely to see you. That it wouldn't it be good to have some pictures of what the airport looked like back in those days. And I found this during the week, which is actually a picture of the Electra 10E being loaded up just before they took off from Burbank, with the Lockheed hangar in the background where this aircraft was built originally, and then was rebuilt after the accident at Luke's Field in Pearl Harbor back in the, the ill-fated first leg of their flight, where they were going to go westward around the world via Hawaii in the first instance. And then because that put some delay into their journey, and all of the winds changed and times of monsoons and hurricanes and things like that, they decided to travel the other way and go eastward. But they didn't announce anything to everybody. And so even at this stage, no one knows that there's going to be a second attempt at a round the world flight with them. Hey, Two Tone, lovely to see you. Hey, Gibbo, great to see you too. You missed my amazingly clever intro where I was yakking away and forgot to turn my mic on. Because last week I started my microphone, told my Alexa to turn on all my lights, and everybody could hear me chatting away to Alexa, which was which was classic. I'm sorry for yesterday. I completely underestimated how long those live event was going to take. Yeah, and they didn't finish till midday. So by yesterday afternoon, I was completely done. So we're here at Burbank, and we're going to be flying, as I say, to Tucson today. And so we might as well get our machine fired up. Well, while I'm here, actually, just before we fire it up, just to give you a quick view of this as well, which I also found recently, which was also fascinating. This is Amelia in the back of the fuselage on top of some of the fuel tanks, with part of the radio autopilot system that they had, which was built by Sperry. So she actually had a Sperry auto gyro, which I didn't realize she had, which was a bit naughty of me. But as you may know, that was invented by Lawrence Sperry back in 1914. And when he demonstrated this, he literally flew across the airfield with his hands in the air to say, "Look, no hands." And on the second, he actually made 3 flights, and he had an assistant called Emil Cashin with him. And on the second flight, Cashin walked out onto the wing whilst they were doing the flyby to see that the wing would dip and then the aircraft auto right itself. And they went round for the third. But during the third time, he went out on the right wing and did exactly the same. And then from then, auto-controlled, yeah, absolutely, auto-controlled air pilot became the thing. And it was actually taken on to show the confidence, because what Cashin didn't know on that third one was that Sperry had climbed out onto the opposite wing as well. So there was the pilot was on one wing, Cashin was on the other, and there was no one flying. And it was basically to amaze the observers at their ability to maintain level flight without a pilot. And so afterwards they gave it they gave demonstrations to the French Army Air Corps, and it was drawn from there. And Amelia Earhart actually used the Sperry autopilot on this leg for the first time. Because again, it was a shakedown flight. It was meant to be a very long flight of around about 1,300 nautical miles, but she had to break that down, obviously, as we get into Tucson. So yeah, this is fascinating. Do you I thought people were mad in the early days of aviation, but to have such confidence in your autopilot to get out and leave the aircraft flying and have the passengers and the pilot on the wing, incredible. And I don't know if there are any photos of that, so I'm going to go hunting to see if there are. What I'm doing with these photos, guys, is I've actually created a whole load of photos as scenes within Streamlabs, and then I can bring them up to show you how what I'm talking about. So if I take this one away, I can actually now show you Amelia in the cockpit of the 10E, and right in the middle of the screen here, you may see there's underneath the 4 dials, underneath the gyroscope, you'll see what's commonly like that the attitude adjusters that we have today, but that's the autopilot, and it basically is a wing leveler. And she used it on this leg of the flight. Yeah, people like pushing to the envelopes. Absolutely. Absolutely, they did. And hopefully, if there's a cat bat around, I am trying to stream this into Discord from my Twitch page as well. So the only thing I can think of, guys, to say now is I might have some stability problems today because I'm streaming, capturing, and flying. So I've had a few problems the last few days. So hopefully, if we crash, I'll catch you all up. So we're here at Burbank. One thing I will do today is I'm going to use the WPP Blazing Sun from SoFly. Today, on the 21st of May 1937, was blazing hot when they went into Arizona, so I'm going to keep that to be the same. So that should be nice and good. And I will get rid of me now while we get fired up. But I can never remember how to turn me off. So do that, and that. Yes! I think I've gone. Right. Okay, so here we are. Let's have a quick look around. Yeah, this is the park, and there's Johnny behind me. This is where they shoved me for my parking space. Brilliant. Okay, so let's just do some ailerons. Nice and free. Rudder. Elevators. Get into the aircraft. Let's have a look around here. Free movement here. Nice clunking around as we get ready. Brakes, pedals all working. Nice. So let's get the window open as we fire up. So let's get the beacon light on. Get some mixture in. Propeller full. Drop it back a little bit. Crank the throttle a little bit. Master battery on. Shouldn't need the boost, but I'll put it on just briefly. Clear prop. And with the engine fired up, let's get the window shut. Avionics can come on now, taxi lights, nav, and leave the strobe for the moment. We're actually going to take off today from runway 15, so we'll turn right out of this parking spot, go down to taxiway Bravo 3, Bravo, Bravo 2, Bravo, Bravo 1, and then we'll turn on to runway 15 from there, and we'll take off to the south. We are going to be flying about 8,000 feet today, because that's the altitude level that Amelia picked on this leg to test the autopilot, because she wanted to give herself enough room should anything go horribly wrong. The number of buttons increase. Yeah, I know, I've got tons and tons of buttons now. I need one of those Stream Decks like you guys. Okay, so parking brake can come off, and we're going to look left, look right. There's technical Al there and Johnny behind me, so we shall taxiway out here. I must try and be good. I always tend to speed along the taxiways, which I shouldn't do. I used to get told off when I was taxiing around the airport at Newcastle by my instructor. Slow down, slow down. It's not a race. Need to do some work on Burbank, don't they? Hey, Scotland. Oh, yes, Jefferson. I'm flying on North Europe. I must ask Mr. Murphy how he does that server stuff. I couldn't get the commands working earlier, but then I'll do some up so you guys can do which server. But yeah, North Europe for this afternoon. And apologies if it crashes. I have had some problems with drivers. I've put the latest WHQR ones on just in case. Okay, let's get ourselves set up here. Right, can come on. Set my altitude to 8,000 because we're pretty much going to get up and away as she did. 8,000, nicey. Set that to altitude. Landing light can come on, taxi light can come off, strobe lights can come on. Check for traffic, we're all good. Oh, we've got Mr. Murph and some Fireflies with us, nice. Okay, so let's put it on. Oh, I'll tell you what I haven't done. I've loaded in and I haven't done what I was meant to. 100% fuel, and I'll talk about 100% fuels when we take off. Okay, so on this flight, they fueled up to do maximum fuels, so that all the wing tanks were full, the fuselage tanks were full, and Clarence Johnson, the avionics whiz kid that looked after the Electra when it was being built, had worked out that 8,000 feet was the right height for this type of journey in the Electra, and this is where they decided to try it out, just to make sure nothing would go wrong. Okay, airspeed's alive. Wobble, wobble, wobble. Okay. Positive rate. Gear can come up. Over 300 feet. Wings can, flaps can come up. Let's get some trim into this. Okay. I'll do a lap of the runway. There's a few people on the ground, and then we'll lap of the airport, and then we'll head off on track. I guess this sort of must have been a lot more sparse back in the day, right? This airport once upon a time used to be in all of its own city limits and has grown and sprawled out to become part of North Hollywood and Los Angeles. See Jefferson moving on towards the runway. Hopefully the sounds aren't too bad today and you can all hear. Now I can turn the fuel pump off. Let's turn to the left. Clean the mixture a little bit, pull back on the throttle a little bit, and continue the climb. Okay, so people are up and away. So we're going to start getting back onto track and head on down towards Tucson. Just get some flight director on then. And off we go. Yeah, I know. You know, back in 83 years ago, when this was like unheard of. I mean, she was actually very naughty on this level of flight as well, because her aircraft that she was flying today actually received the civil registration number of November Romeo 16020, and the R stood for restricted. And what that meant was that she was actually only meant to fly with official crew, which was herself and Fred Noonan. But on this particular leg, she had a husband, George Putnam, who went on to become the publisher of her book, and also the mechanic, Beau McNeely. So they were in absolute breach of their restrictions. The aircraft originally was certified to carry 10 passengers, and it had been restricted because obviously it was like a bomb with all the additional fuel that they had on board. So as we're climbing up to 8,000 feet, which was this leg's flight journey, in a moment you should see a picture on screen of Clarence Johnson with his model of the Electra 10E, and this aircraft was all tested out in a wind tunnel he built at Burbank, and he later went on to become the head of the Skunk Works division of Lockheed, famous for such aircraft as the Blackbird and so on. So he's quite a famous man, but this was a picture of him with it before, later on, after he'd passed his masters and everything. He was quite young at university when he did all this. So the 10E, what an aircraft. So it had Oh, how big was this thing? Oh, so the 10E. So it was given to Amelia Earhart on her 39th birthday on the 24th of July 1935. She was, as I mentioned, it was only configured to carry flight crew, but they often broke those restrictions. It was 38 feet long. It had a wingspan of 55 feet or 16.74 meters, and it was approximately 10 feet 1 inch high. An empty weight of this aircraft was 6,454 pounds, and it had a gross weight of 10,500 pounds. But because this was heavily modified for this journey, it had an empty weight of 7,265 pounds, and its maximum calculated takeoff weight was 16,500 pounds or 7,483 kilos. It had a fuel capacity of 1,151 gallons or 4,357 litres in 10 tanks in the wing and fuselage. It also carried 80 gallons or 302 litres of lubricating oils that were carried in 4 additional tanks. So this thing was really heavy. Didn't really have much in terms of carrying for foods. And so on these main legs here, they just took sandwiches. It had 2 air-cooled supercharged Pratt & Whitney engines. They were Wasps S3H1s, compression ratio of 6:1, and it could basically drive the aircraft at 550 horsepower at 2,200 RPM at 5,000 feet. But with all the work that they did, they rated that 8,000 was the best climb for this. And basically with that at 8,000 feet, the climb and the rate and the kilometers per hour, she could approximately do 4,500 miles per leg in her adjusted Lockheed Electra, which my Mooney is not going to be able to do because it's not going to carry that much fuel. But to think that it ran out of fuel over the Pacific with all that on board, it's quite something. I hope this is all streaming well for CatBat over on Twitch and Discord. Uh-oh. Get rid of that. Time to change the tanks. And now we're at our altitude height. Let's bring the manifold pressure down and get the RPM down. And then we can... Wasn't really paying attention to my mixture, was I? And then we'll get her into cruise now. And here we are, flying over Southern California on a blazing hot May day in 1937. Who we got behind us? We've got Two-Tone, we've got Jefferson, here's Johnny, lovely. Should give us more than enough height for this leg. sliver of a moon showing up in the afternoon sky. It's a good question. Do you know what? I don't know. I actually do not know why there were two. They've actually used it quite a few times, though. I'm sorry, I can't find the answer anywhere either. I wish I could answer that one. But I do know it was the first aircraft to come equipped with mudguards on its retractable landing gear to protect the undersides of its engines. The only thing I can think of is obviously it was named after a star in the Pleiades constellation, but I guess they just carried it on. I missed you were going to race me to the runway, Johnny. We can do that next time, because when we fly out of Tucson next week, there's going to be a sandstorm on the ground. We're going to try and recreate the sandstorm if possible. Hey, Al. No worries. Gibbo, we're heading at approximately 101 degrees. One zero one. And I'm doing approximately 147 knots airspeed and 174 ground speed. I see you. There you are. Good to see you, Gibbo. And Belbro, thanks for coming along. And Technical. One of the things that I don't think we also consider when, back in the day when they were planning these type of things is this is something that Two-Tone works in, logistics. But it wasn't just about her flying around and getting the aircraft from place to place. She also arranged for mechanics to fly ahead and arrive at certain places in preparation for her arrival. So on this leg, when they were doing the preparation flights, and they'd picked to go through the Caribbean because it would be more favourable weather later on in the journey than it would if she'd gone the other way around. She had engineers arriving in Karachi when she landed in Honolulu originally, and then they had to come back and send all of the people to different locations so that they were in place for the second leg. But she had to basically reverse months of work and get mechanics into different places, and there was a bit of a rush to get mechanics into Miami for the beginning of June, where she wanted to give the aircraft another shakedown right before it took off again. Now you're doing the multitasking, Mr. Murph. She says, setting back the date 3 months, the seasons relentlessly progressed. In some places, progress would be for the benefit of the pilots, in others the reverse. Here rains began and then they abated. Here winds were favourable and then there were monsoons and choking dust storms. So we were to set studying again the weather maps of the world and consulting with meteorologists who knew the habits of fogs and rains and temperatures around the long equator. The upshot of these consultations was I decided to reverse the direction originally chosen for the flight. It had seemed that the advantage lay in the passage to the west. At latter date, the contrary appeared true. After all, for practical purposes, and disregarding Mr. Einstein, the world measures the same distance from west to east and east to west on any given route. So basically, she had consulted with Albert Einstein on the journey from a physics point of view, and he'd recommended one route, and she was basically disregarding his route. He'd always said go west to east, west to east. The compelling factor in our decision was the probable imminence in the Caribbean and African areas much of less favourable weather later than early June, so it seemed sensible to get this part of the journey over as promptly as possible, although we altered the original course, which would have taken us through Brazil up through Panama, Central America and Mexico. Instead of following the route, I decided this journey across the United States to Miami, where we could do a practical shakedown flight, testing the rebuilt ship and running thereby saving times of testing here in California, and do it at Miami instead. And I knew there was a fine mechanical assistance to master such bugs that we developed on the 3,000 miles. So I like the fact that she also called it a ship. She always called it a ship, her aircraft. Jefferson's catching me up. I think that's Diamond Valley Lake ahead of us. My geography of Southern California is not brilliant, despite spending some time here when I did my law studies. the preparations for this flight and the disastrous first attempt had put some pretty severe financial strains on Amelia Earhart. I know that she asked a lot of help from friends and family, pretty much mortgaged everything to the hilt. As I think she said, on the prosaic dollar and cent side, friends helped generously, but even so, to keep going, I more or less mortgaged the future, without regret, I would say, because for what our future's for. She also had to rearrange with the Coast Guard to move cutters that were going to be in locations around the world. So I know the Coast Guard cutter was moved to Howland Island to act as her radio beacon. It was originally going to be stationed around Honolulu. Hey, how you doing? Sorry, I'm chatting away here. I was saying, no, Mr. Murphy, you were right. I would not have made that. I don't know what I did wrong with my calculations there. I'm not normally wrong, but that was way too high for 8,000 feet. So I've been yakking away. Oh, and now I've got loads of reverb. Sorry, can you hear me now? My mics all went into a bit of a state. I was talking about this lake here, which is called Sultan Sea. So landlocked lake. It's very high salination now. Went through a dreadful ecological change in the 60s, 70s, where farm fertilizer runoffs basically caused the salination to rise really high, caused lots of fish to die, changed migratory patterns for birds and all sorts of things. I think that they tried to do something to it, but I still believe it's never truly recovered and is drying up. And as it dries, the dust causes dust storms across Arizona. Okay, well, we can get back on course now. So changing back, and I'll drop it down to 8,000 feet now. I say, I don't know what I did with my navigation. My chart still says that hill that we crossed should have only been 6,437 feet. So 8,000 should have been more than enough. And then we'll bring her down to 8,000 feet as well. So yeah, Sultan Sea. It's approximately 15 miles wide by 35 miles long. And basically came into formation around the 1900s when canals and irrigations were all set up and the valley flooded. Apparently the smell can be somewhat awful. One small spike, that was a much higher than that. It's the first time the elevation data has been wrong from Globar. No, it's probably my fault, Stuart. You didn't kill it. It was I was pressing buttons. So, like I say, this journey we're on at the moment, it was completely unannounced. When the Lockheed came out of the plant on the 19th of May, it was flown to Oakland quietly, and they made sure it was all loaded up, and they slipped away heading towards Miami. and then with the hope of keeping onwards eastward from there. And the idea being was that if anything went wrong, they didn't have to announce that they'd cut it short again, and they could quietly return to the airport at Burbank and the Lockheed plant and get it fixed. I think she was somewhat, although not unsurprisingly, I don't think she ever said that she was her confidence was knocked. And I know that she had been asked that, has the accident shaken your confidence many times? But she said that question was asked of me. The answer was clear in my mind. Nothing happened that changed my attitude towards the original project. Indeed, I felt better about the ship and its equipment than I ever did, and I was eager to fly it again. The plane's performance had been all that she could have asked for. If anyone had cause to lament, it was the Electra itself and I, for I put burdens upon her in which normal flying she was not built to bear. She was a heavy overload. As a matter of fact, very few times since we started our partnership have I ever flown her without one. Come to think of it, most of my flying has been in overloaded planes seeking some performance distance, so the problems and the risk of this phase of the flight were not unfamiliar to me. So she certainly hadn't had her confidence dented, but more she thought that perhaps she was putting her aircraft to the limits of their endurance. Nice, Jefferson. Yeah, I've spent some time in the States, mainly in the East. Um, I spent some time in California when I was doing my law degree. I did English and American law, and in my career when I worked for Micah, we spent a lot of time out in Cincinnati, and I'm a huge baseball fan, and Cincinnati were big in the '90s, so they're not so good these days. But I've gone out there, literally thrown out on a Thursday, attended games Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and flown home on the Monday. So it's 8,000 miles and back. Oh, sorry, 3,500 miles and back to watch a baseball game. So I'm a little bit crazy. So 260 miles to go, and we're now over Sultan Sea. I won't open the window and have a sniff. Apparently it's not recommended. And time to change my tank, because I'm not paying attention. I'm reading everything you guys are saying and stuff. Yeah, so I've been to Wisconsin, Illinois, New York, Nevada, Arizona, California, and Ohio, and a little bit of Kentucky, but that's about it for me. I've never been much in the States. But I did take a helicopter flight to the Grand Canyon, and we landed actually down in the canyon, which was absolutely amazing. I loved that. That was absolutely fantastic. So we'll have to do a canyon run one day down the Grand Canyon, won't we? We haven't done that yet. So yeah, the sun's beating down on us. And you'll notice I've changed the number of my aircraft to be the same as Amelia's. I forgot to do that last week, so I changed it this week. Amelia was asked several times on this trip how many times she'd flown across the continental United States, and she came to the realization she didn't actually know. She'd been commuting from coast to coast so many times that she didn't really know what. So she said, my coast to coast commuting has been going on for some time in many planes of many sorts, from my first little Avro Avion, an Autogyro, up to the Electra, not to mention many crossings on airlines and about half a dozen by automobile. Adding it all up, it's very hard for one to know just when I was static enough to get much done, and that only needed doing in one place. So basically she was like never still, always busy doing something. Ah, Joshua Tree National Park, cool. Yeah, she had a lot of fuel. She did so much flying. It's incredible what she achieved. Endurance, distance, height, you know, crazily the highest altitude for an Autogyro, you know, considering these were 1930s, 18,415 feet she went up in an Autogyro. She also flew an Autogyro coast to coast, which would have taken some time back in 1930s. I mean, they're not very fast these days. It's Diesel Dan. Hey Dan, how are you doing? Good of you to join us. Some of the guys, Gibbo, Belbro, here's Johnny, Technical Al, Two Tone. I did spend some time pootling around yesterday afternoon in the Power Solo, short takeoff and landing, ultralight. Now that was something in VR. That's an incredible little plane. Basically, you know, it'll fly at 18 knots. You know, so you can go fly really slowly, pretty much land it anywhere you like. Get it up to speed enough, and it will do an aileron roll, which scared the Jesus out of me, but it did it. So if you like low, slow aircraft, that's actually quite fun. And the developers, I guess the gauges on it need a little bit of work, but they are readable, and he is working on them. But it's actually really fun to fly. Very hazy out, as we can see. strictly not too far from the Mexican border at this point, are we? I guess it's just off to our south. Mexico, one place I've never been. Must be quite hard typing in VR. I can sort of type with my left hand when I'm in VR, but definitely don't try to do it too much. So speed-wise, I'm doing around 150 knots now, 8,000 feet. We're tracking back on 094 degrees, and temperatures are nice and good. Everything's in the green. Fuel flow is nice. 11.4, 11.7. That'll keep us going. So it's about 7 hours of flight. The next leg's a long one, so I might start a little bit earlier next week because it's over 1,000 miles. But seems a lot, but it's actually one of the. It's not the longest. I think the longest one's about 2,600 miles. As we cross from South America to Africa. Where are you flying from, Stu? We started in Oakland last week. It's when you fly over America in places like this when you realise how vast a country it is. You know, look, it's just nothing, even today, really, around for quite some time. Look at that flying, guys. That's awesome. Yeah, it's something we don't really have in the UK, is it? I mean, there are areas where it's not very populated, but it's just not vast areas of no one around for miles. He did say he was firewalling it. It looks like he is. If we see him spiraling out of control in a bit, we'll know why. Yuma International Airport is off to the south, Gibbo, where I am at the moment. It's probably 34 miles from where roughly I am to the south east. Kilo Lima Golf Foxtrot, or there's Kilo Bravo Lima Hotel, which is Blythe, which is 28 nautical miles to my north, to my 9 o'clock north from me. Is that the rugby? Is that on this afternoon? Ah, football. It certainly is, Jefferson. It's absolutely still as anything, isn't it? A little bit of a bump over the mountain. It would have been a bigger bump if we'd hit the bloody thing. But now it seems very pleasant as we come to an hour's worth of flying ahead of us. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming along and joining me on my journey. It's been brilliant. Thank you. Obviously, it's hard to talk about each flight as we go because she didn't write much about these legs. Whereas once we get to Miami and beyond, I'm going to be reading her excerpts, her radio messages that were recorded as she radioed back positions and everything. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more history going and interaction. So she didn't write very much about this leg in its own right, so I haven't got much to say until we land, and then I've got some things to say, but not too many things to chat on about. It's a very routine flight for her, this leg. It is a nice Firefly Escort. It's lovely. I'm quite glad I live in the era I lived. I'm a technology nut, so seeing technology expand as it has and what it allows us to all do, sit, talk to people around the world, share our interests with people, which, back in the day definitely wouldn't have been a thing. But there's a part of me that wishes I could have, been there to go to the cinema to watch the news of the latest, achievements set by people. Reading in the papers, which who reads a paper these days? So down to our south now, which should be Yuma, just beyond Murphy over there is Yuma. Okay, time to change tanks. Everything's still on the green. It's a nice 17 degrees outside temperature at 8,000 feet. Yeah, everything's looking good on the engine temperature. Take care, Gibbo. Thank you for joining. Hope the football goes your way. See, I can be nice about Liverpool. Take care. Jefferson on my left wing. I do hope they'll bring out an Electra for Microsoft Flight Sim. I'd love to fly that. Definitely going to get the other one they're bringing out. Oh my god. The Vega. The Vega. Keep forgetting it's a Vega. They are bringing. Someone's working on that. So, and then I will take that across the Atlantic to follow her solo flight in 1932, where she emulated Charles Lindbergh's flight 5 years after he did. And I think it was funny. She landed in Culmore, which is north of Derry, and she was witnessed. And a farmhand walked up and said, "Have you flown far?" And she went, "From America." So very short and succinct. Excuse me. So the aircraft she flew cost approximately $80,000. Was funded predominantly by the Purdue Research Fund Foundation, and also donations by several individuals. It was ordered and delivered in March 1936. They got rid of all the passenger windows because they were never going to have any. And obviously, I mentioned earlier, they installed a stereo autopilot and radio navs and additional batteries. I thought it was because obviously the aircraft had a tail wheel. They used to do lots of the flight testing and adjustments whilst the aircraft was in flight attitude. So they would often jack up the rear of the aircraft until it was in flight attitude mode. It was odd to see. I think I've got some pictures that I'll share with you when I get to Miami where they did some work on it. But it's quite interesting to see that they did a lot of the work with it as it would be flying. Thanks, Smurf. So yeah, 80,000 for the aircraft. Then of course she flew it in March 1937 to Honolulu, and then she was taking off at Honolulu when the undercarriage gave way, or the wheel gave way, and she obviously spun out and crashed the aircraft. That repair alone cost another $30,000. And I mentioned earlier that she'd got most of that from donations from friends and from remortgaging. It was very heavily damaged. The propeller's gone, the cowlings had to be removed, the tanks had to be emptied, and then it got transported back. To Burbank. And interestingly enough, I think it's interesting, but I didn't realise that, when you think about it, that they actually scanned the aircraft with X-rays for hidden damage whilst it went under repairs at the Lockheed Aircraft Company at Burbank. I didn't realise that was a thing that they could do, but yeah, apparently they did. I don't know if you can see that, but let me save that. There's a picture of the Electra when it was back after its crash at the Lockheed factory at Burbank Airport. And this is the team using the X-ray machine to test to see whether there's any hidden damage in the aircraft. I always think of X-ray as a relatively new thing, but it's not, is it? It's been around for a long time. On the front of the aircraft, you can see the UHF radio loop that they used for communications, and you can see the hatch for the pilot where the pilot could climb in to the roof of the aircraft. Unfortunately, they reckon that the UHF radio was incorrectly fitted, and had it been fitted correctly, it might not have had so many problems on the journey, which ultimately led to her not being able to communicate at the last on the last leg of her flight. And they reckon that may have contributed to her not being able to get help and directions. It's quite interesting to see how big the air radial loop is on the top of the aircraft. Okay, so we're 53 minutes out now from Tucson, 155 nautical miles to go. Sun bearing down and beating down on us as we fly. Still nary a township to be seen. Yeah, as I say, it was a blisteringly hot day when she flew towards Tucson, so I thought I'd emulate it with blazing suns, and certainly think you can feel it. My other half seems to be having pumped up the heating volume in the house because it's quite cold up in the north today. Of course, the other thing like yokes, they were very much like steering wheel back in 1937. Certainly in this Electra, both of them were circular. Still doing just shy of 150 knots, indicated, and 175 ground. So we're doing approximately the speed that the Electra used to do. And of course, we're using the Moonies, which were used in the 80th anniversary of her flight. And the Moonie went round the world. So very fitting to use the Moonie for this journey, given we can't use an Electra. Some nice red Moonie flying there, just hovering above me. Velbro, Cat. Oh, Catbat's joined. Lovely. Jefferson, Velbro, Technical Owl. Nice, Stu. Where did you fly from? Time to change tanks. Don't know why, but my mixture is incredibly sensitive today. Oh, nice one. So down from Boeing, Half Moon. Nice. Ah, it's diesel van. Getting some screenshots as I go. Okay, so we're about 40, just shy of 41 minutes ETE into Tucson. Bearing 096 degrees, approximately 150 knots, 176 ground speed. Thank you, Tom. It's very kind of you. I'll try not to be naughty and crash. Certainly recovered after my ridiculously long day on Friday night, or Friday and Saturday. Can't believe mistimed how long that was all going to last. Started about 1 o'clock, didn't finish till just before midday. So had been up all the day before, all the way through the night. I was pretty much dead to the world yesterday. Managed to get some decent sleep last night, that's for sure. So we're obviously in, well, I think we're in Arizona now. As a big baseball fan, Arizona as a state is home to the Cactus League, which is where they spring training takes part, and this is where the Cincinnati Reds, my team I support, come down to play every spring. It was a bit cut short last year by COVID, and the season was very, very strange. This year, I don't know. We probably won't do so well. We got to playoffs for the first time in 7 years, and then get rid of a load of good players. So, but we were never going to be able to keep Trevor Bauer. He was way too good. But I'd like to come out to Arizona one day and watch spring training when this pandemic's gone. Hopefully the music is not too loud. Picked up some music from Epidemic Sounds to play as we fly along. I thought orchestral would be better for some of these flights. Nice flying, guys. Nice flying. So our next leg's going to be a long one. First of the long ones. Over 1,000 nautical miles next time. From Tucson to New Orleans, where we'll be able to stop off for some nice Creole and Cajun food. Nothing for miles around except the fireflies. The airport elevation at Tucson is approximately 2,594 feet. Winds all pretty still. So we'll probably come in on runway 29 right. So we'll come alongside Tucson. We'll swing down, come round and in for a landing on 29 right. Very slight crosswind. Nothing to worry about. Take care, Technical Owl. Thank you so much for coming along and joining us. Have a good rest of your day. So 28 minutes out now from Tucson, which was actually only meant to be a fuel stop. This was meant to be a 1,300-mile leg from Burbank to New Orleans. incredibly sparse out here. So, a little bit of prep now as we come in. Just look at my map. At 45 miles till we start coming down, descend. Guys are still with me. Diesel Dan, Catman, Jefferson. Here's Johnny, Belbro. Of her aircraft, Amelia once wrote, "My flying laboratory became equipped with all that is modern in instruments. It has a Sperry gyro pilot, an automatic device which actually makes the ship fly unaided. There's a Bendix radio direction finder which points the way to any selected broadcasting station within range. The finest of two-way voice and code Western electric communications equipment, whose installation by the Bell Laboratories under the aegis of Dr. Frank B. Jewett Incorporated. The plane itself is of a two-motor all-metal monoplane with retractable landing gear. It's the big brother to the two Lockheed Vegas, which I have used on other flights. Has a normal cruising speed in excess of around about 180 miles an hour and a top speed in excess of 200, with special gasoline tanks that I have had installed. It's capable of carrying 1,150 gallons, has a cruising radius of 4,000 miles, and a full load the ship weighs 15,000 pounds, and it's powered by two Wasp H engines developing 1,100 horsepower. Anticipation, I suppose, sometimes exceeds realization whenever the final outcome of the trip itself. Certainly there was extraordinary interest in the months of planning for it. Her flying laboratory. She called it that really because the flight was meant to be more than just a flight. She was testing human endurance as well. So length, time, how it affected the human. Flying in for that sort of time. So she said of herself many times that she and her pilots and passengers and engineers were all guinea pigs on this flight. The aviation industry had become so mechanical and economic problems that the effect of flying on personnel was not always given the attention it deserved. So she was interested in finding out whether one kind of food is better when you're flying, what the effect of your altitude on metabolism is. She wanted to know the rate at which fatigue is induced by the myriad of instruments that the pilot had to use. What will stratosphere flying do to creatures accustomed to dense air of lower altitude, she thought. Are men and women different? Do they react differently to air travel? And if so, how? And perhaps why? With the modern plane, it seems to me that too often the attainment of speed, other considerations have been sacrificed. Safety, perhaps. Perhaps we would do well to go back to elementary flying machines on the early day and work forward with them all over again, starting with safety. Hey, Colonel Falk, lovely to see you. Yeah, you're a little bit out. We're about 13 minutes out now, about 39 miles from Tucson. Doesn't matter about being late, that you turned up is lovely. Thank you. Next week, Colonel Falk, is a much longer stream because it's over 1,000 nautical miles, so it'll go on for a bit longer next week. Yeah, we're currently flying towards Tucson. It's blazing heat as it was back on the 21st of May 1937 as Amelia Earhart and Ted Noonan, George Putnam and their assistant mechanic flew towards Tucson. It was meant to be a fuel restop flight. It wasn't meant to be an overnighter. They were meant to refuel and get underway again and head towards New Orleans. Oh, crikey, yes, you're back. I'm sorry to hear you've hurt it. I can thoroughly recommend gel ice packs. Obviously not straight onto the skin, but 20 minutes every 2 hours really helps. Not only does it relieve some of the pain, it stops the nerves firing so often, so you don't get as much pain, especially if it's muscular. I hope that it eases for you soon, Colonel Falk. We've had a nice little jaunt down. We've had several of the Fireflies with us. We still have Catbat 9, Here's Johnny, Jefferson 2001, Belbro, and Diesel Van. We had Two-Tone Murphy flying a little bit earlier, and Gibbo Island. Gibbo's gone to watch the football. Technical has left us just shortly. But everyone else is here, and we'll make it to sunny Tucson. Yeah, definitely. There's snow digging, clearing paths and everything. It's not something we're very accustomed to over here. Of course, I'm yakking away again. Have I changed my tanks? Yeah, I'm good. 2 more gallons, then I need to change again. Just over 10 minutes out now from Tucson. We're going to run past the airport and come back in on runway 29 right. Yeah, so we'll start descending as we get near to Ryan's Field. Which is on the outskirts of Tucson. Of course, if you were all here several weeks ago, we were here with Colonel Falk when we flew over Davis Monthan Air Force Base and the aircraft graveyard, which was very cool. Bit of a scenery glitch there by the looks of it. Looks like a long hole in the ground. very much looking forward to the patch this week. Should be doing quite a bit of flying around the UK. I shall do some of it in the new short takeoff and landing microlights that I've got. They are brilliantly fun. I'll see if I can land at Eden at Land's End without killing myself. I think that'd be a challenge. It's great to have them along. It's great to have everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. I really appreciate it on this little, I'm just doing it for the love of the journey, really. Another 24 legs to go. Some 28,000 miles still ahead of me. Some very, very long legs. As I mentioned before, the aircraft that Amelia flew was very, very, very outfitted with extra fuel tanks. So I will not feel guilty when I auto refuel the aircraft in the air on her legs that were long, because obviously the Mooney doesn't have the capability to go 4,000 miles like the Electra did. Although the 1980, the 80th anniversary flight used Moonies, where they extended the fuel capacity a lot, but still not quite as much as that. This has got what, 95 gallons capacity total. Okay guys, so just to let you know, I'm going to start slowing down imminently to descend down as the outskirts of Tucson is coming to view. So I'm going to take us down to about 4,000 feet. And as I come down, I will prevent overspeed by using the speed brake. There's Ryan Field Airport just off to our right there. One of the VRPs that I have on my map. Just applying speed brake a little bit to stop that overspeed. The wind does not whistle when you do try to overspeed. Yeah, it was a much larger aircraft. Yeah, I showed some pictures earlier, Colonel Falk, of the extra fuel tanks in the aircraft with Amelia on them. So I can share that now. So that one, not that one. Hopefully that'll pop up in a few moments on the screen. But that's Amelia on top of the some of the additional fuel tanks where they had the radio gear, and just behind it was the navigation area, and that's the radio equipment for the Sperry gyro autopilot that she used on this leg for the first time. And ahead of us, airfield in sight. Just off the nose. 12 o'clock. two airfields out here, of course. We've got Tucson International, which is the one we're going to land at today. But obviously we have the Air Force Base next to it. While we're doing this, let's change that to 290. It's funny, isn't it, seeing buildings after all this time? We've pretty much done nearly 3 hours with hardly any buildings. It's been incredible. Okay, so airport ahoy. Coming off autopilot now, and then we're going to fly parallel to the runway in the airport for a while. I must say, since I started flying in VR, keeping an eye on the airport and everything is so much harder in 2D. Okay, so landing lights can come on. We'll change to full tank. Bit of a stutter there. So it's much harder to see where you're going. Oh, that's an awful approach. Dreadful. Very high. However, not going wildly too fast. Long runway, can recover this. Oh, I don't know. Gently. Well, from absolutely dreadful to not too bad. And here we are, down at Tucson. Whoa. Tons of rudder. Let's clear it up. Get it off the runway. Oh, that was dreadful. How not to do it. So tidy up the aircraft. There's Johnny coming in. Nicely done. Diesel Dan's behind me. It's Jefferson now. I don't have the drone cam, so I wish I'd set that up. See, you're making me look bad. You're making it doing so nice. I turned that in so late. Oh no, Belbro, no, really? Oh. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I mean, to be fair, I've had quite a lot of CTDs recently. I removed my drivers and went back to the very first ones for the Radeon 6800, and today has been pretty good. And catback is down. So we're all down. We'll mosey on over to a parking spot in a moment, and then we'll just have a quick chat about what happened to Amelia when she arrived at Tucson, because obviously this was not meant to be a final stop of the day. This was actually meant to be just a refueling exercise, because they wanted us, go another 1,000 miles. I just wanted to top it all up, because then they were going to go from there to Miami, to New Orleans and Miami without refueling. So let's put us over here, off on the taxiway here to the right, and up over by, which it looks like a Jabiru over there on the left. Watch out for a speeding crazy car. Suicidal ground crew. And then we'll pull it to a stop here at sunny Tucson and clear her down. as always. Good old flight sim, not counting my takeoff. But let's click continue. So, as I said earlier, wasn't meant to be a full stop landing here at Arizona, but they pulled in for a stop, and basically she wrote, accompanying me on this hop across the continent was Fred Noonan, Bo McNeely with my mechanic, and Mr. Putnam. A leisurely afternoon's flight ended at Tucson, Arizona. The weather was sailing hot as Arizona can be in the summertime. After landing and checking in, when I started my motors again to taxi to the filling pit, the left one backfired and burst into flames. For a few seconds it was nip and tuck whether the fire would get away from us, but there weren't even adequate extinguishers ready on the ground. But fortunately the Lux apparatus built into the engine killed the fire. The damage was trivial, most pungently cooked rubber fittings and a deal of dirty grime. The engine required a good cleaning and the ship a face washing. So basically landed, refueled, or went to go and refuel, and basically the left engine caught fire. And then they had to stop, clear it all down, and get it ready for the next day's flying. So it's incredible to think that, even doing some of this stuff, was not without problems from day two. So quite incredible to think that, she picked herself up, dusted themselves down, getting into an aircraft that caught fire the day before. Must have been something the next day. But here we are in Tucson, having made it safely. None of our engines on fire. We can put our feet up and enjoy another restful end to our flight. And we shall rejoin here again next week. It's going to be on Saturday because it is a longer flight. I'm probably going to start it a little bit earlier, probably 2 o'clock on Saturday, because it's going to take some time to get through. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. And I will have more to read and more to talk about as we go through the actual flight itself. She didn't write very much of this element of the flight. She kept it very, 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 very light in her words. But we'll have lots to talk about of all the different journeys as we go from Miami. But the next one is a long one to New Orleans. So thank you so much. I appreciate everybody that's come along and joined us on the flight. Glad to have you here, and glad that you're joining me on this journey across the world that Amelia Earhart started all those years ago. So I hope you all have a fantastic evening and enjoy yourselves, and we'll catch you on Murph Streams tomorrow. So until then, have a great evening, and I will catch you all soon. Take care, everybody. Take care.